As we continue to cover breaking news out of Kamloops, where Operation Inspiration has ended abruptly and tragically, we are now hearing from crews on scene. There has been one fatality after one of the Canadian Forces Snowbirds crashed into a residential neighborhood in Kamloops. That has been confirmed by the Canadian Armed Forces, that crash, and multiple eyewitnesses on the scene who watched the plane take off and crash shortly before noon today. We are following all the latest developments on this. Here is what we know at this point. We understand the jet crashed into a house that then caught on fire. At least one pilot inside the downed plane is said to have ejected, according to witnesses, but their condition and the condition of any civilians on the ground has not yet been confirmed by officials, though we do know from Emergency Health Services that they have taken one person to hospital at this point, and according to crews on the scene, as we said, a female pilot is said to be dead, and a male pilot who ejected from that plane is said to have sustained injuries. Witnesses report hearing a loud bang and then seeing black smoke as the jet plummeted into a house on Glenview Avenue. We're told one of those pilots ejected onto the roof of that house. That pilot, we are told, and we have confirmed, is now receiving medical attention. We are told the elderly residents inside that home that burst into flames on impact after that plane crashed into it are uninjured, but the home is obviously destroyed, as you can see on your screen in the video and pictures that we have there. The Snowbirds flight, the last leg of their cross-country journey, had been delayed due to weather conditions earlier this morning. We know rescue crews from Kamloops have been deployed to that crash site. No doubt a very busy day for people on the ground in Kamloops right now. And we have somebody on the phone for some analysis on this. We want to bring in George Miller, who's joining us right now on BC One. He was a Snowbird leader, a retired colonel who flew with the Snowbirds between 1973 and 1974. We're interested to get his perspective on this. George, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, not at all. My pleasure.
So, George, first of all, your reaction to this awful news that we're hearing out of Kamloops.
Well, it's just devastating. You brought me up to date with your just recent reporting a moment ago, and that's terrible. Just to think that we have one fatality that was not aware of that, and injuries related to this. So, I watched the airplane take off on video, the information on video, and it seemed to be straightforward and normal spacing, no problem evident whatsoever. And then I just see the one aircraft ease off and just sort of commence what I thought was the beginning of some sort of maneuver that seemed to be intentional, and then it just completely nose straight down and into the residential area. So I'm glad that we have one pilot that's safe, the other, or at least under medical examination, and the other, unfortunately, was killed.
And George, we can hear your phone ringing off the hook there in the background. No doubt a lot of people trying to get in touch with you because your perspective on this is so valuable. You were team lead of the Snowbirds back in the 70s. And you mentioned watching that flight take off, watching the formation, and then obviously watching something go terribly wrong. As an expert and as a former pilot, what's your thought when you saw what happened today?
Well, when I see that, I immediately, of course, my heart went in my throat because I've been in the situation many times in that sort of formation. The Snowbirds, as they are today, much like they were back in the beginning, in the 73, 74 time frame, is much the same. So these pilots are superb pilots. They're so excellently trained. They're so well selected, and I understand that one of the pilots was a female, and females have been flying with the team now for a number of years, and they are just so expertly chosen and have such capability. So, I'm not sure who was on the controls, whether it was a male or a female, but it doesn't make any difference. They're equal in ability and capability. So, and they were on a superb mission, and just finishing off a spectacular and wonderful, well-advised national tour of the cities and over hospitals. This coronavirus thing, and all was going very well. And this is such a tragic and sad ending. Of course, the the operation obviously will stop now, and remaining aircraft will return back to Moose Jaw, I presume. So, the thing I have to say is that the team is so close. Members on the team are very, very close. They train together. They do a high-profile, high public relations operation for the Canadian Forces, and the whole team is so well thought of in our country. It's a national icon, and they well deserve that reputation. And to see it now just stop for hopefully not too long, but to head back at the tail end of this excellent operation is a heartbreaker.
And George, as you mentioned, and as we know, these are some of the best pilots in the country. They are highly skilled, they are highly capable, they are handpicked, as you were as well back in the day when you flew with the Snowbirds. You talked about recognizing that formation that we saw obviously go terribly wrong earlier this morning. Can you describe to us, people, not pilots, who don't have the aviation knowledge that you would, the challenges that can come from executing that formation that we saw early this morning?
Well, that formation was simply a very, very simple two-plane formation taking off, and I'm not sure where the rest of the aircraft were. They have already been at Comox. I know the two aircraft taking off were apparently heading to Comox, either to rejoin or moving on ahead of the rest of the team coming. And just watching it, it was a standard formation two-plane where they're, I would say, 4 to 5 meters apart, something like that on takeoff, and there didn't seem to be anything untoward happening. I mean, strange things can happen. Of course, you have a mechanical possibility. It didn't look like there's any connection between the two aircraft in terms of the mid-air collision. It was a straightforward takeoff, and then all of a sudden, one aircraft breaks off and gets into this extremely difficult situation. And what that was a controlled jamming situation or significant engine failure, and something happened where they lost complete control of the aircraft, where there was an explosion inside the cockpit that would incapacitate the pilots and force them to eject immediately. The ejection was, I saw the ejection on television, you could see it. Of course, the problem was as soon as they ejected, the seats come out of the aircraft with the rocket-propelled charges, and that's where you saw the little smoke, and you saw the two smoke streams from the ejection itself. But there's a downward trajectory because the aircraft was coming down very fast, very steep. So there was very, very little time.
All right, George, thank you so much for your insight. I'm sorry we've got to cut you off right now, but George, we appreciate your time. That is George Miller, a retired colonel and former lead pilot of the Canadian Snowbirds back in the 70s. George, thanks again for your time.
Not at all. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's go now to Brett Manier of CHNL Radio in Kamloops. He was one of the first journalists on scene. He called in for an interview with Global BC in the noon hour. He spoke with our Jen Palma. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Standing actually right nearby where one of the pilots came down on the roof of a home. The parachute is actually, I can see the parachute lines are sort of tangled in the chimney on the roof. I'm not able to see or confirm the condition of the pilot, but I was able to obtain video from a witness on the ground who, and that video shows two aircraft taking off in tandem from the Kamloops airport, and very quickly after, one of the two aircraft breaking off and trying to gain altitude very quickly. He runs out of speed. The airplane turns over and goes into a stall and a spin. And then as soon as the aircraft has sort of a canopy towards the sky orientation, the canopy pops off and there is an ejection. But it's unclear. You can't tell from the video whether both of the chutes were able to open in time. But like I mentioned, I'm standing near where one of them landed in the middle of a residential neighborhood in the Brocklehurst neighborhood of Kamloops.
Wow, unbelievable. What are people around you doing right now? Is there a lot of panic? Are people calm? Is there a lot of emergency on scene?
It's starting to calm down now. People are really just kind of saddened and standing around just in shock. Everybody came out to the airport and all over town yesterday to watch the flyover. And, with the flyover done, there was a crowd gathering again at the airport. Of course, everybody distance out and whatnot to watch them leave. So there were quite a few witnesses at the actual airport. And then people in the Brocklehurst neighborhood would have been coming outside to watch them leave as well, to depart for their next leg of their Operation Inspiration.
Okay, and what time do you think that crash happened at? Like less than an hour ago or so?
Yeah, it's between 50 minutes and an hour ago.
Okay. And as you said, people said they could hear a loud bang and the plane descending, basically.
Yeah. There was a loud bang, and when it hit the ground, I know people came out of their homes from a few blocks away and came out to see the smoke rising. The fire is now out. There's no fire now currently.
Okay, well, that's good news. What was the weather like there today?
You know what? It started off rainy and overcast, but it is clearing now, and the sun is actually just starting to peek out. And actually, as I say this, I can see now that a WestJet flight just came in, so they do have the runway open at the Kamloops airport right now, because a WestJet flight just flew right over us. So on the way in, the weather's good at the moment, but I know that their departure this morning, it was looking like they were changing their plans because weather in some of the mountain passes wasn't going to be great for formation flying. So they were planning on going to Comox rather than wherever the next stop on the tour was through the Okanagan and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. And so they had actually delayed their flight plans today, hadn't they?
Yes, they had due to weather, but the weather picture was improving. But they were going to fly to Comox and then swing back and visit the communities that they missed today. They were going to swing back on the return to Moose Jaw in a few days.